Dakar. Promoting dialogue. It's midday in Dakar, 1 o'clock in Cotonou. Good afternoon and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on wadr.org. Welcome to Newslink. Here are the top stories. Non-governmental organizations in Guinea challenge the suspension of their activities by the government.
We, the human rights defenders, when we suspend the delivery of agreements, it goes without saying that some of us feel impacted.
Over 300 dead and more than 1 million displaced due to severe floods in Niger. In Liberia, several anti-corruption CSOs petitioned President Boakai over the non-asset declaration by over 1,000 appointed officials.
In the line with Section 1 of the Witness Protection Act of 2021, suspend all 959 public officials who have not declared their assets.
And Nigeria's Arewa Consultative Forum cautions against the inaction of authorities on vices destroying the northern region. Details of these stories and more coming up shortly.
Here is Augustine Coley with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining us and welcome to our listeners within and outside the sub-region. This edition begins in Guinea because several non-governmental organizations and associations have challenged the suspension of their activities by the ruling junta. This decision was contested on Monday by a group of human rights NGOs before the Supreme Court. The activists are seeking the annulment of the decision announced by the Minister of Territorial Administration, whose aim, according to them, is to frustrate NGOs and associations in the field of human rights in the country. Francis Boniface brings more details in this report by our Conakry correspondent, Chenno Alpha Ibrahim Balde.
On September 2, 2024, the Minister of Administration and Territory announced in a press release the suspension of the issuance of approvals to NGOs and associations operating in Guinea. According to these NGOs and associations, the minister's decision is illegal and hampers their activities in the field. To overturn the decision, they have decided to appeal to the Supreme Court, says Emelabile Christophe Kone, a member of the collective.
We,
the human rights defenders, when we suspend the delivery of agreements, it goes without saying that some of us feel impacted. So for all these reasons, we cannot seize the ultimate opportunity to ask him to simply cancel this decision that we consider illegal.
The Guinean minister who gave reasons to justify the suspension said activities by NGOs and associations often disturb public order in the field. Emelabile Christophe Kone believes that these arguments are only intended to distract opinion and discredit human rights organizations.
I can say no. NGOs have not failed in their list of responsibilities, and so we can, just from start, make a decision that prohibits the delivery of aid or support to all entities that want to operate in the city. That said, the minister wants to restrict our freedom.
In the field, many NGOs and associations are complaining that they have lost funding from partners because they were unable to renew their approvals. For the moment, the measure remains in force until further notice, according to the Minister of Territorial Administration.
Francis Boniface voiced that report by our Conakry correspondent, Chenno Alpha Ibrahim Balde. Over to Liberia, some civil society organizations on Tuesday petitioned President Joseph Boakai over the emerging governance and corruption issues. The CSOs, under the joint grassroots civil society anti-corruption initiatives backed by the Center for Transparency and Accountability, are concerned that officials of the current regime are yet to declare their assets months after assuming office. According to the petitioners, their refusal contravenes the law. From Monrovia, Grace Joshua reports that the anti-corruption campaigners are also demanding the establishment of a witness protection agency to protect whistleblowers.
Lead anti-corruption advocate Tawan Dixon, citing governance issues in Liberia Democratic Journey, laments the current government business as usual attitude. Dixon argued that there is no harm in government officials declaring their assets emphasizing their firm stance on making office holder accountable for donors' funding.
We should not be gallery on the soil to ask them to declare the assets. So, yes, now we have customers who use our time to do something different. But because we have laws who don't seem to be in our interest, so we are here again to see how best public officials can declare the asset. So imagine all of 73 or so percent have not declared the asset.
Presenting the petition at the executive mansion in Central Monrovia at Duffer Banks, the program officer of JOSIO said the 959 appointed government officials should declare the assets in line with the code of conduct. Banks proceeded to making additional demands.
Operationalizations of Witness Protection Unit in the line with Section 1 of the Witness Protection Act of 2021. Suspend all 959 public officials, all of the total of 1,281 appointees who, according to the Laguna Anti-Corruption Commission, August 24th report, have not declared their assets, incomes, and liability. 3. Submit a bill to the legislatures for the removal of the statute of limitation that prohibits prosecutions of corruption cases after 5 years.
In February of this year, President Joseph Boakai declared his assets and assured the Liberia Anti-Corruption Commission that he is on board in the fight against corruption. Boakai's call to cabinet officials and other appointed executives to follow suit in declaring their assets for the betterment of the country has seen low compliance.
Grace Joshua is WADR's Monrovia correspondent. Elsewhere, the Gambian judiciary, in collaboration with Pepperdine University, Los Angeles, USA, on Tuesday organized a workshop focused on plea bargaining in criminal cases. The meeting aimed at engaging legal partners in preparation for the forthcoming criminal procedural bill currently under consideration in Parliament. Judges, lawyers, law enforcement officials, and representatives from civil society organizations gathered to discuss the implications and operationalization of plea bargaining in the Gambia legal system. WADR's Sankule Jankodin Banjul has more in this report.
The workshop featured expert sessions on the benefit of plea bargaining, including its potential to reduce case backlogs, expedite the judicial process, and offer a more efficient resolution for both defendants and the state. Hassan B. Jallo is the Chief Justice of the Gambia.
The Sentencing Council has recommended a number of guidelines which I have promulgated, particularly in the area of sexual offences, assaults, property offences such as theft, etc. And these sentencing guidelines all provide some incentives to plea bargaining.
Chief Justice Jallo says plea bargaining has become a strategy widely used around the world.
It has become a strategy in the criminal justice process for decongestion, for more expeditious disposal of cases in a fair and transparent manner.
One of the legal partners of the event is Pepperdine University, a private Christian research university affiliated with Churches of Christ, with its main campus in Los Angeles County, California. Professor Danny DeWalt is the Vice President and Chief of Staff at the Pepperdine University and explains his institution's partnership to inculcate plea bargaining in African countries.
There is an issue across the globe that is not unique to your country or, frankly, to my country or to many of the countries across Africa. But we see this issue of case backlog. We see this issue of overcrowding in prisons. And we understand that both of these issues lead to a problem with access to justice for our people.
As criminal procedural bill moves through Parliament, this workshop represents a significant step toward modernizing Gambia's legal practices by ensuring they align with international standards and better serve the community. For this link in West Africa Democracy Radio, I am Sankule Janko reporting from Banjul.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Let's turn our attention to the Sahel region now, particularly Niger, where 339 people have died and over 1 million displaced due to severe flooding. This is according to latest update reported by the Nigerian press agency on Tuesday, citing the General Directorate of Civil Protection. The report reveals that 158,399 households were affected by torrential rain, 383 people injured, and significant losses of equipment, livestock, and tons of food as of June 2024. Abdullahi Hassan completes the story.
The latest update highlights the severe impact of recent flooding in the region, particularly in Maradi, which has recorded the highest toll with 111 deaths, 19 due to drowning and 92 from building collapses. Following closely, the Tahua region, which has seen 99 fatalities, including 69 drownings and 30 collapses. The Zenda region reports 65 deaths, with 7 by drowning and 58 from structural failures. In fourth place, the Dosso region has experienced 22 fatalities, comprising 14 drownings and 8 collapses. The Liberia follows with 15 deaths, including 9 from drowning and 6 from building collapses. The regions least affected are Niamey, Agadez, and Difa with 9, 10, and 8 deaths respectively. As a reminder, the Nigerian government has postponed the reopening of schools to the end of October 2024 due to the devastation of academic facilities and the displacement of families. Meanwhile, in neighboring Mali, transitional authorities reported 649 cases of flood as of October 4, resulting in 76 deaths, 148 injuries, and nearly 260,000 people affected.
Abdoulaye Hassan reporting there. Now to Cote d'Ivoire, Charles Rodel Dosso, former minister and collaborator of ex-President Laurent Gbagbo, was transferred to the Abidjan penitentiary on Monday following his arrest last weekend at his home in Abidjan. He is accused of inciting popular revolt and taking part in a banned protest. In a press release, Laurent Gbagbo's PPACI expressed its indignation at what it considers to be a dictatorial shift in power. Echi Atisu has the details in this report by WADR's Albin Adey in Abidjan.
According to the PPACI press release, Charles Rodel Dosso, as Deputy Secretary General in charge of mobilization and civil society, was abducted on Saturday from his home in Benjaville by a commando of hooded armed men. The men claimed to be acting on government orders but did not produce a warrant signed by a judicial authority. Charles Rodel Dosso was taken alongside 2 of his executives to an unknown destination. However, the latest news is that he has been transferred to the Abidjan penitentiary, formerly known as Makar. For the PPACI, the security services should first summon and hear Charles Rodel Dosso and his colleagues if they are accused of any wrongdoing in compliance with the law. Leader of the party, former President Laurent Gbagbo, in the release, expressed his indignation and denounced what he called the dictatorial drift and practices of another age introduced by the RHDP regime. The arrest of Charles Rodel Dosso, accused of inciting popular revolt and participating in a banned march, is coming 12 months before the October 2025 presidential elections. The PPACI expressed its solidarity with its abducted officials and called for their immediate release.
Echi Atisu with details of that report about WADR's Albin Adey in Abidjan. In Ghana, 31 more protesters who participated in the anti-Galamsey protest organized by Democracy Hub have been granted bail by a circuit court in the sum of 20,000 cedis or $1,256 with one surety each. This brings the total number of protesters granted bail to 52 out of the 53 detained, with the lead convener of Democracy Hub and activist Oliver Bickel Van Moor still yet to be granted bail. However, the group claims the protesters remain in detention, criticizing what it describes as procedural delays in their release and accusing state authorities of intentional inefficiency. WADR's Nadia Detete reports.
The Circuit Court on Tuesday stated that the fundamental human rights of the accused persons must be protected. This came after the accused persons' pleas were taken and they pleaded not guilty to 5 counts, namely conspiracy, unlawful assembly, causing unlawful damage, offensive conduct conducive to the breach of peace, and assault on a public officer. However, the lead convener of the group, Oliver Baka Vomawo, was denied bail for the 3rd time after the Attorney General's department opposed his application. Prior to this, he had been denied bail by both an Accra High Court and the Circuit Court. Despite the activists being granted bail, the group says 51 of them remain in custody. In a statement issued on October 8, Democracy Hub criticized what it described as procedural delays in the release of the activists, accusing state authorities of intentional inefficiency to prolong the suspect's stay in police custody. The group expressed concern that the verification of sureties, a standard procedure required for bail release, had yet to be completed. In response, Deputy Attorney General Alfred Chayebwa stated that investigators have a responsibility to ensure that those standards standing as sureties for the accused are properly identified and traceable. However, he added that the government will not tolerate any efforts by investigators to frustrate the process of granting or executing bail for accused individuals.
If there are genuine cause to prove that indeed a state agent is preventing the accused person from having the bail order executed, we will definitely come to the aid of that accused person. But the accused must also know that the police officers who are the CID officers must also be satisfied that those who are coming to stand as sureties are people that they can identify. So in the event that the accused person has cause, then they can then identify where the sureties live and then bring them to court.
For WADR, Nadidi Tete, Accra.
You are listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Here is a reminder of the top stories. Non-governmental organizations in Guinea challenged the suspension of their activities by the government. Over 300 dead and more than 1 million displaced due to severe floods in Niger. In Liberia, several anti-corruption CSOs petitioned President Boakai over the non-asset declaration by over 1,000 appointed officials. Still ahead, Nigeria's Arewa Consultative Forum cautions against the inaction of authorities on vices destroying the northern region. We do have the press review, guest interview, and the sports news. Please stay with us.
You are listening to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal.
Thanks for being there with us. The Arewa Consultative Forum, a prominent socio-cultural group of elders from northern Nigeria, has sounded an alarm on the devastating impact of terrorism, banditry, and kidnapping on the region's survivor. From Abuja, Usma Umar completes the story.
The ACF's concerns are multifaceted, highlighting the dire consequences of inaction. The group stressed that the northern region is plagued by Boko Haram, banditry and violent crimes, which have displaced farmers, led to the abandonment of farmlands and fueled food insecurity. Mohammed Bashir, chairman of the forum, has cautioned authorities on these trends.
We are frightened of the possibilities that this can also grow in the next 5 years to 10. We do not know what can happen to our existence as northern Nigeria until very seriously urgent actions, positive, definite actions that is going to be directed squarely to bring in these ills to an end as soon as possible. The danger will be really unimaginable.
The recent flooding in Maiduguri has also raised concerns about disease outbreaks and loss of livelihoods, underscoring the need for urgent action. Formed in the year 2000 as a quasi-political and socio-cultural association, the Arewa Consultative Forum seeks to promote the interests of northern Nigeria. The ACF's call to action is clear. The Nigerian government must prioritize the security and well-being of its citizens, particularly in the north, whose futures hang in the balance. The group is demanding prompt response from policymakers and stakeholders alike. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Abuja.
To Environmental Matters, a two-day conference aimed at protecting the environment and promoting sustainable development in the face of environmental degradation, is on the way in Dakar, Senegal. The conference, which began on Tuesday, brings together environmental experts, lawyers, policymakers, and stakeholders to address pressing environmental issues in the West African sub-region. Oge Obiorika reports.
Environmental issues have become a major concern for countries within the sub-region and beyond. The degradation of the environment, fostered by political, economic and scientific factors, amongst others, are at the heart of the concerns of state and international organizations. Sokna Jeka, Director of Natural Justice in Senegal, an organization that specializes in human rights and environmental law, says the conference is a call to action to promote the environment and promote sustainable development.
You know, the environment is the most things does not have any border, and that's why it's really necessary to have this kind of activities, this kind of meeting, bringing together environmental laws, bringing together lawyers, bringing together church, and then having a discussion on the future, what is the next step of the environmental laws in West Africa.
But despite the already dire situation, the region remains rife with the destruction, exploitation, and extraction of natural resources with little to no regard for health and safety standards, lives, and livelihoods. Here, SACNA recommends measures to address the challenges of environmental law in West Africa.
We need to react, to revise all the rigors of our laws in West Africa, the policies, the access to the African market, and also seeing how we can integrate, how we can work together.
The reform and implementation of environmental law is essential in achieving sustainable economic, social, and environmental development in the sub-region. Thus, the Laboratory of Studies and Research in Policies, Environmental Law and Health at the Sheikh Anta Diop University, Dakar, is calling on relevant stakeholders and policymakers to amplify actions towards supporting legal procedures that protect the continent from environmental and climate injustices.
Oge Obiorika fight that report.
This is the newspaper review. Stay abreast and find out what the top stories are in your country.
This is the newspaper review.
The newspaper review.
Let's return to Banjul, the Gambian capital, and John Sankule Janko for the press review.
Let's begin with today's press review with the foreign newspaper. 2 journalists deny false publication broadcasting charge in court. Of course, these are the editor-in-chief of the Voice newspaper, Musa Sharif, as well as his reporter, Mohammed Adabo, who've been currently charged by the police for false publication and broadcasting. Petroleum product inquiry, parliamentary inquiry marred by in-camera interference. Banker allegedly steals $458,570 from GNPC, that is Gambia National Petroleum Company. Former KMC revenue collector unable to account for revenue shortage. Now let's move on to the Standard newspaper. Dabo urges IGP to avoid being used by Barrow. Dabo is the opposition leader and Secretary General of United Democratic Party, that is UDP. This other one reads, please charge singer with offensive lyrics. Gambia orders face backlash after supporting proposal to commercialize whaling. And this other story reads, report claims both Israel and Hezbollah raise funds in West Africa. Now let's move on to the final newspaper for today, and that is the Point newspaper. Access Bank pleads with NA to appear solo in petroleum saga. NA is the National Assembly of the Gambia. Defense Council urges court to free accused in alleged PIU shooter case. Controversial KMC Welfare Association $12 million loan lands at Commission. And this other one reads, DLEAG discovers 9 cannabis farms in Fonyi. 3 suspects arrested. Of course, DLEAG is the Drug Law Enforcement Agency of the Gambia. I'm afraid these are the major stories making headlines on Gambian dailies. And it's back to you in the studio.
Thank you, Sankule Janko, for the press review.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is The Guest.
The guest segment this afternoon takes us to Liberia, where some civil society organizations on Tuesday petitioned President Joseph Boakai over the emerging governance and corruption issues. Our guest is Anasu Miamen, Executive Director of the Center for Transparency and Accountability in Liberia, CENTAR.
Corruption has been a long-standing issue in Liberia. There have been some efforts from government, civil society, citizens, development partners, and other stakeholders, including even the media, to forge a formidable fight against corruption in the country. But of course, there have been challenges. We continue to face challenges, especially around the issue of dealing with impunity, enforcing the laws we have on the books, and the leadership of the country leading by example to tackle corruption in a more concrete, impartial, and holistic way. So we did our petition yesterday to basically make some recommendations to the government in terms of what it needs to do or to improve performance when it comes to dealing with corruption.
What are the specific issues of corruption that you as CSOs have identified and want the president to address?
There are a number of things, but we highlighted few in the petition statement. One of the things that we're recommending to the president and his government is for them to operationalize the winning
Witness Protection Unit. We passed a witness protection law in 2021 to provide protection for individuals and groups who will serve as witnesses, especially in cases related to corruption. Since the passage of that law, we haven't moved to the next step in terms of actualizing the law. So we were calling on the president yesterday to establish the Witness Protection Unit as provided for in the law, and also provide resources to it so that it begins to work. Part of what we're asking for from the president is for him to suspend the different officials he's appointed. That's now 159 in particular of the 1,000 plus officials that he appointed that haven't declared their assets, incomes, and liabilities according to the report from the Liberia Anti-Corruption Commission. We have a code of conduct for public officials that requires those who come to government to declare their assets, incomes, and liabilities so that citizens get to know what they have coming to government and what they will have when they're leaving government. But compliance with that law has been very limited. Most of the officials that the president appointed have refused to declare their assets, incomes, and liabilities.
Has the CSO as a whole identified some of these officials that are allegedly involved with acts of corruption for which you need the president to act on these alleged corrupt attitude by these public officials?
Yeah, different issues have been coming up since the new administration started. For example, the president appointed at the Liberia Telecommunications Authority, Abdullah Kamara, he was there at some point. His name came up in an audit report produced by the General Auditing Commission that shows that the company that he was associated with went into a contract with LTA at the time, but then they didn't go through the required process. GAC has reported that the resources meant for that contract was not judiciously utilized. So it's an issue, that kind of grave issue the president we expect to ask. There have been also concerns around use of public resources. For example, recently it was reported that the Minister of Commerce and Industry bought a vehicle worth $96,000 US. A poor country like Liberia that is struggling for resources, of course, we have enough to foster development, but because of corruption, we haven't done enough to lift people out of poverty. So one government official cannot buy a car for $96,000 while the rest of the members of the population are lacking basic social services.
Anosi Miame is the Executive Director of the Center for Transparency and Accountability in Liberia, CENTAR. Now, in the world of sports, the official draw for the Total Energies CAF African Nations Championship 2024 qualifiers takes place at 2 p.m. today, Wednesday, in Cairo, Egypt. A total of 40 nations will be engaged in the draw to determine the first of two rounds of qualifiers to determine the final teams that will qualify for the 8th edition of the tournament. We've come to the end of this edition of Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Christian Mukidi and Maudo Juf for the technical assistance. Do interact with us via our social media platforms, X and Instagram at WADR News, and on Facebook, WADR English Service. I am Augustine Kali. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via